All right. So here we are with Jamie Della. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited for this interview today. How about we start with your bio?
Okie doke.
All right. Jamie Della is the author of 9 books, including the Book of Spells, The Magic of Witchcraft, which is why I contacted you, and the Wicked Cookbook. She has a writer's spirit and a free-spirited, untamable soul and loves to teach, write, throw pottery, and get out in nature. She legally changed her name to Jamie Della, dropping the surname that attaches her to the patriarchy. She states, "This new identity was made in deference to my Nana Della and is a declaration of my devotion to the divine feminine." Jamie is the mother of a beautiful, smart daughter and 2 free-spirited, intuitive sons. All right, Jamie. I'm like Jamie Della. All right. Tell us about your name change.
So it's funny, I accidentally set off bells jingling when I said that. So my grandmother, my Nana Della, was the matriarchy of our family, but she crossed over the month before I was born. So my mother named me Jamie after her best friend from kindergarten. My mom was 19, grief-stricken, named me Jamie Della, hoping that I would imbue the qualities of her mother, who was strong, proud, Hispanic woman, as well as that free-spirited child that she knew named Jamie. So my first last name was Wolfgang. That was my dad's last name.
Not a bad last name.
Not a bad last name. Pretty cool, actually. Almost went back to it. And then it was Martinez when my dad left and my grandfather kind of took over parenting. And then we have a stepdad, and so then my last name became Bud. And then I married, and my last name became Wood. And so there was 4 men who were kind of, and traditionally speaking, that's when women would get so excited because they were claimed by a man, because otherwise we were like flotsam and jetsam out there. And
right, we don't know who we are.
Yeah, exactly. So we needed this surname from a male to give us that standing in society. And so when I first divorced my husband, I wanted to change my name immediately, but it was $800. And as a single mom, I'm like, that's groceries for boys. I don't have that, and so I waited until it became more reasonable, and I don't know why it changed. And I thought it was ridiculous. It would be $800 to change your name, but I needed that time because Della means noble, but it also means of the.
It also means what?
Of the.
Okay.
So Della is of the. So I could have been Jamie Della Luna, Jamie
Yes.
of the moon, Della Montañas, Della Mariposa. I mean, I was coming up with I was going to go with the wolf, it's Lobos, but I'm almost like, oh no, Lobo, Lobat. I was like all the gender thing with that. And so with matching Della, it's supposed to have a feminine with the Spanish language. Anyways, I finally decided I am a woman who is constantly becoming. I am the goddess, constantly giving birth to myself.
Yes.
I am the divine feminine who is showing up however I am today at 53. I am that divine feminine when I was 20. Will be that divine feminine when I am 70. So I am constantly evolving. And that's why I decided to keep it Jamie Della instead of adding any other names, even the ones that I might give myself, because I wanted to give myself permission to always evolve.
And I love that because as women, as human beings, I should say, we are always evolving. We are always learning. We are always growing. And if we're not, then we're not doing it
right. Right. Exactly. We're always looking at, for me, even in arguments, when I, with family or friends or whatever, I try to look, am I holding blinders like a horse running down the racetrack? Or can I pull those blinders back and go, oh my gosh, I was being bossy here, or I was being self-centered, even if it's a small amount, even if it's only if the other person still carries however many percentage of the responsibility of an argument or a miscommunication. I always look for my part because that's how I grow.
Yes. And yes, same. I often self-reflect
Mhm.
in so many situations when I'm driving away or walking away or thinking about it afterwards. You self-reflect like, okay, what could I have done better there? How could I have communicated better? How could I have received it better?
Yes,
Right?
exactly, and it is definitely that communication in the did I speak from love? Did I hear with love? That reciprocity in a communication, in relationships. I mean, that's what we do. We women are social architects. We're the ones who are building, and then those men who are also bringing in that divine feminine, because anybody has access to the divine feminine. It's not that the goddess only lives in female bodies.
No,
She
no, not at
lives in all, but that's a really important thing. It's so important for people to recognize that it's not just about being a woman and being able to do this work.
no,
You can,
anybody's able to do it. It's just the same thing as we can tap into our masculine side, our bold, our sun side,
yeah,
right? And
yes,
the same goes for actual male looking people that, exhibit feminine qualities. It just means that you 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 can think outside the box.
yeah,
And you're
well, yeah,
expansive and you invite people in and it's
and our divinity has no gender.
right,
And so these roles that we've assigned to gender, we're trying to kind of carefully, right?
right,
Carefully deconstruct the parts of our this divine feminine idea and earth spirituality that is the backbone of a magical life, having that connection to the earth. We look at the mother and we look at the goddess, but the thing of it is that our patriarchy has created such a division. So you hear more conversation now about the divine feminine to bring that equality so that boys can cry, so that women, can feel good about using 3 times as many words as they do.
yes, definitely.
And then the other thing, what I liked about it, which is brings in the magic, is I always had magical women in my life. My other grandmother, so my first grandmother provided this, like she was like my grandma Coco. If you think of the Pixar movies, she was always that doorway to the spirit world, that it wasn't scary because Nana was on the other side. And so my other grandmother was a tarot reader, and she was really big into numerology. And
Cool.
so it would always be the numbers of your name as they relate to the archetypes of the major arcana of the tarot. I mean, these are things that, I don't know, maybe other grandmothers were making tea. My grandmother was like, doing reading my fortune.
Amazing. That's such a great upbringing.
So
Tap into
Jamie,
that.
yeah, so it was, so Jamie Wood is 9 letters, and that corresponds with the hermit, that corresponds with that archetype who holds out the light for themselves. If you think of like literally like the witch on the mountain or at the edge of the village or the midwife, if that word is easier. But this idea that their light is the Star of David. It's as above so below, like if you have the 2 stars and that, or I mean, the 2 triangles making that star, then they are being the light for themselves. And that is that guiding point that they don't necessarily connect with others. So where you're the leader, the one on top, it's a different kind of a space. Jamie Della has 10 letters.
Mhm.
So those 10 letters, that's either the Wheel of Fortune, or if you reduce it to a 1, which I normally do just 1 through 9 for the archetypes, you get the magician. And that is what the magician does. They stand there and they bring heaven and earth together. That's why in my book, I spell it with magic with a K.
I wanted to know why you did that.
Well, there's 2 reasons. One, because it separates it from trick magic.
Uh-huh.
So that's one. In other words, like sleight of hand, Penn and Teller kind of magic.
Right.
And then with a K, it signifies that this is magic as in a way of life, as in what is attached to manifestation and connecting to the elemental energies, of air, fire, water, earth, and being a dirt worshiping tree hugger, you know. And so the G is the ground, so grounding with Mother Earth, and the K is the sky. So that is the reflection of the energy that is coming from the Sky Father. So Mother Earth and Sky Father, and in between is where we live. We live in this in between of the Father Sky energy, that sun energy, that doing energy, as well as embodying the grounded energy, the being energy of the Mother. And magic is what happens in between, like a Venn diagram.
I love the Father, Son, and the grounding of Mother Earth.
Yeah, I feel like it's a because it feels so kinesthetic, and so using actual, like, I want to go like, it's like this. Yeah, exactly. I feel like I need like to insert a little mini video of me in there at that point, explaining it with my hands, because it is such an it's like the Waldorf education.
Right.
It's all in the doing, you know.
It's all in the doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, really love this book, and it just the minute I opened it and the words that I'm reading, I was just like tingly all over. And what's funny is that, you know, there's a connotation to spells and witchcraft and witches, and yet, you know, just the other day I was talking to a neighbor, and she just kind of mentioned casually to me, oh yeah, so I have a girlfriend who's doing this kind of workshop. She started this kind of little school, and, you know, she's a witch, and blah blah blah. Like, just that word witch flew out of her mouth as if it was, you were talking about the gardener. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's wonderful. That's how it should be. Like, witches are healers. They're just magical in a beautiful sense. And why don't we make this more out there, that people aren't afraid of? Because this book is so empowering. I mean, I'm reading it and I'm like, I want to send this to all of my daughter's friends, because because the essence of the book is, you are you're wonderful, you have what it takes to create whatever you want. And guess what? If things don't feel right to you, you can just brush it off with a spell. Like, you have spells in here, but I would imagine that even if you didn't have the stones, the crystals, the candles for the sacredness of it, if you just said those words 3 times a day, yes, all that would disappear. And we don't need to subscribe to anything that isn't us, and anything that isn't real, and anything that doesn't make us feel wonderful and huge and loved and perfect.
Exactly. You're exactly right. My teacher, there's 2 points in there. My teacher used to tell me, you know, you're magical, like if you're on a deserted island and you don't have your cauldron or your, you know, your wand or your feathers or your crystals or your herbs or anything, can you still do the magic? Because the number one ingredient is always intention.
Yes.
And for me, a spell is a prayer in 3D.
Yes.
So all those things that you bring, all those elemental things, like if you had the you know, the black tourmaline for protection, and you had the rose quartz for unconditional love, you know, these are reminders of what exists in you. So this is the tangible thing that you can hold.
Yes.
That goes, oh yes, I feel protected. This is like very rock solid hard, and this just resonates with my heart chakra, and I can feel these things. But that's the practice of having your life surrounded with this beauty, and this surrounded with these messages of empowerment, but knowing that you don't need the tools. The tools are what gets you to activate that knowing within yourself.
Yes. Random reminders.
Yeah, they're the reminders. And yes, the magic lives in you, as you, through you. So that was the important part that I wanted people to understand, that these spells are like a recipe from a cookbook. If you don't like basil and you prefer oregano, you know you're going to just put in the oregano. You're not going to ask someone's permission. You're not going to think, oh, this recipe isn't going to work. if I don't use the right herb.
Right.
That's the key too, is that this idea that it might not work, that you did it wrong. And there could be a lot of other reasons that things don't work out. It could be timing. You
Yeah.
could be, wishing all day long for a lover or a partner, but if the timing isn't there, if you have to learn something about yourself first, it doesn't matter what you do.
Right.
And when you're looking for a job, it's important to know what it is. What is that focus? It's not just a job. It might be you want a mentor.
Yeah.
Perhaps you need to make an X amount of money. Maybe you want to be able to have forward mobility. Maybe you don't want forward mobility. Maybe you just want something to keep you entertained.
Right.
But when people ask for things, what I try to encourage them to do and empower them to do is, what is it specifically that you want? What is the feeling that you want to have, not the look? Because sometimes we think the white picket fence, or the car that looks like this, or the person that looks like that, or the job that has this kind of title is what we want, or what we are moving towards. But maybe really what we want is a sense of security, or a sense of confidence,
Yeah.
or a sense of feeling loved within a community. Those are the feelings that we're after, and that is the intention that is behind every spell, that is behind every desired manifestation or dream. And like you said, the positive affirmations repeating 3 times a day, that's telling your brain, go make that happen.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know?
Things aren't going to happen if you're not thinking about it. I mean, they do and they don't, right?
Right.
And it's always about the feeling.
Yes.
Going back to what I said about wanting to buy this for all my daughter's friends, of course, the first thing that comes into my mind is always the girls, because the girls need it. The girls need it. We go through life and we feel bad about ourselves.
Right.
But like, you're a mother of 2 boys. So how does your being, your magicalness inform who they are? How has it? And did they read this book? And what did they think? Do I send this to my friends that have sons?
Well, I feel like, the last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, my youngest son, who's 21 or turned 21, he came to visit, and he was doing these videotapes of me talking about Ostara, spring equinox is another name for spring equinox, which is coming up. So was creating this video, and I was, trying to break it down and explain it to him, to the computer. But I was looking at him as I was talking, and I was stumbling at first. And my son Kobe says, Mom, when magic is your life, it's just your life. You don't even know it any different. So that was his explanation of how it informed him. When they were younger, and we'd be like, okay, we're going to go see your cousins in a few days, or we're going to go to Disneyland, or whatever it was. And they're, so excited. When is that going to happen? And I would say, it's going to happen when the moon is full. Watch for the moon. Look at that tangible aspect. And so it was so much part of their life. When we planted vegetables or garden or herbs or whatever, we had an aloe vera plant. And this aloe vera plant, when Kobe, I keep talking about him, but it was when I was a little more empowered with him. When he was born, I gave birth in a hospital, but I asked for his placenta. And so I took the placenta home and I buried it under an aloe vera plant. And the reason I did that is because the DNA of his DNA would go into that plant. And that way we could also have babies. It wasn't something that was just going to live once and then die.
Right.
So I still have babies from the aloe vera plant with me. The mother plant, the mother plant got super root bound, or I call it the grandmother plant now. I got super root bound, and then we buried that together in the riverbank in Orange County, where our family has lived for over 200 years.
Oh, wow.
And then, so everything has been everything is always ritual with them. It's always steeped with all this meaning. And so when he was 4 years old, I told him, you lived in a balloon inside my belly. And when you were born, the balloon came out, and I put that under this plant. And now you and this plant are like brothers. And whenever you're sick, this plant is your specific ally. You can come here to this plant. This plant will heal you of wounds from burns. This plant, and I just kept going through. And so for them, it was just what we did. We just put out food for the fairies at Beltane. I would talk to them about, how when you dress up for Halloween, that is a chance to give you to step into a different side of yourself that you see and feel, but you don't get to be very often. So dress up as Dracula, dress up as a cheerleader, dress up as a flower, whatever you want to do. This is the side, that shadow side, the side that lives in the shadow of your fullness that you don't express as often. So it was, everything was always this, it was such an integral part of our lives that, when people come to them and nowadays, and they'll say, oh, have you ever heard of this thing called Wicca? They're like, well, bet. Have you ever heard of witchcraft? So they actually haven't read the book. I don't think so. They all have a copy. They have a copy of every one of my books, but whether or not they just sit down and read it or just know that was always life.
Right. So, okay, now that you're telling me it was part of their lives, so they sort of ritual is part of their life. But what if I were to give this to somebody who's not experienced? I know I could give this to any girl whose mother could be totally like, just straightforward, not about magic, not about spells at all. And the girl will say, "Ooh, this is really neat." But will a boy?
Yeah. Oh, well, a boy. Well, yeah, I definitely have noticed that. I mean, girls in general are 80%, women in general are 80% of the readership. When you go to a Barnes and Noble or whatever it is, that's just the facts. Right. So girls just tend to go to this more, but boys are really finding empowerment with this because I specifically didn't make it gender, that in that way. Because I mean, so I'm just flipping through. Breakthrough apathy. Anyone can have apathy. Yeah. Resist teasing. Be seen as you truly are. Let's see. These are own your own star shine. Cast out bad energy. None of these things are specific to a gender.
No, it's really not. Find your animal totem.
Yeah, all this. And then
the way
that I structured it, heal your past, that was good. The way that I structured it is I have the first third of the book includes what's called magical correspondences. Mm-hmm. And the reason I wanted to do that is, like you said, if you didn't have a white candle, could you still do the spell? If you didn't have lavender, but you had chamomile, if you resonated with, if green means calm to you and I'm saying it's blue, but you get to choose. But this is that starting off point. To me, it's like describing cinnamon's going to be warming in your meals. I mean, like that's just a quality,
right?
That when you use this ingredient, this is the reaction, this is a possible reaction that you're going to have. It's an aphrodisiac, it's all these things, but it's like, and so are other herbs, and so are other things that you can use, and it's what you resonate with.
Right.
Some people like valerian, some people like hops for calming, some people like lavender, some people like chamomile. They all respond. There's no, kind of like when we had the milk does a body good, and then they realized that there's a lot of lactose intolerant people. Mm-hmm. And it was like, milk doesn't do everybody good, and then we would go through, acacia berries are the end all be all. Echinacea is the end all be all. Like right. We go through these things where this herb or this thing becomes our panacea.
Yeah.
Or go-to.
Right.
And what I'm trying to break from is recognize, or trying to empower young people to recognize you get to choose.
You get to choose. And that is a big message that they need to learn, because there's always a choice. Mm-hmm. In any situation that you're in, there's always a choice.
Yes.
Right. And it's beyond the herbs and the crystals and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fun, glittery, oh, look, it's shiny. That's the fun part, because when we are coming of age, we, as in the Waldorf, they talk about the 9-year change. Yes. And recognizing that you're an individual and that you're no longer, part of a family unit. You are standing in your, I am that, in your, it's that one Waldorf move that you go like this. It's It's the walnut energy of the Bach flower remedies. It's the just standing in your trunk,
Right.
you know, and there's this buffet of life of all these yummy, shiny things that are you're just becoming aware of, and it stays, you stay in that wonderment. I believe we mostly stay in that wonderment from that time of 9, hopefully through our 20s, where everything is still kind of fresh and exciting. And
Curiosity.
what's that?
Curiosity.
Our curiosity is piqued. And so this idea that we can actually create magic, or that we are co-creating our world by our choices and our thoughts and what we surround ourselves with. I mean, I have this little picture of this isn't me, but this is a little card that my aunt sent me. And this sits on my desk because I love that part of me. I love that part of me that's like, come on, let's go dance in the range puddles, and let's go play with this magic, and let's go find our inner strength, and let's cultivate it in each other. And that's what's, I mean, and like you said, we can talk about this now. So the Wicca Cookbook first came out in 2000, and it did so well. It sold out of its first print run in just a matter of months. And they were so surprised that they said, oh, the teen group is really getting big. Can you write a teen spell book? And I thought, oh, crap, because I knew that I was going to journey then. I was going to go back to my teen self, because one of the things that is being talked about now is soul retrieval, or when we are traumatized, we fragment from ourselves. So I had a lot of trauma when I was younger, and instead of looking at it as trauma, it was trauma and betrayal, and I added other words and feelings onto that. And so what I did was I went through my teen diary and read all the times, because I kept it like a time capsule, Belinda. I kept it on purpose. I even wrote a code in there to, like, you know, because my mom would, like, you know, like a lot of moms like to read their daughter's journals to kind of find out where they're going. And of course the daughter feels completely violated, you know, and it's a whole thing. So I started writing in code, and I couldn't even break my code. And I finally broke my code, and all it was the alphabet backwards. That's all it was. But what I said was, my mother doesn't like me. And I didn't even want her to read that, because that was too hard. She didn't know how to communicate, how to have that conversation. So that was the main heal your past hurt that I lived with through my 20s. So that when the opportunity to write the teen spell book came to me, that felt like the universe going, are you ready to get off the pity party? Because we'd love for you to join the real life. Like, stop living through your pain. Stop having that, you know, that lens, you know, that you're always seeing your life through your sad story. I literally went to Sedona with a couple of girlfriends, deciding whether or not I could actually write this book. I didn't know if I had the courage. I felt like I was going to be in the land of the lost, stuck in the caves with the slee stacks, and I just didn't want to go there. And so we went to Sedona, and I was debating whether or not to write this book. And I was staring at this drop of, like, snow was coming in. There was just a little drop of water, and I could see the reflection of one of the mountains, one of the spires, and one of the, like, where the vortexes were. And then I had that feeling, you've worn the mask of sadness for so long, it's stuck. And it was the image of the tragedy and the comedy of, like, drama. It's like, it's time for you to start living through your happiness now. And I was like, wow, it was one of those, like, downloaded messages that just kind of, like, comes in a full, you know, form. And I turned around, and 5 feet from me was a coyote. And coyote is the trickster. And so coyote medicine was saying, okay, you've tricked yourself now. You know, you did what you had to do to get through, but now you're almost 30, and it's time to let this go. And so I was like, and then the coyote, like, run up the hill, and I whistled to it, like, cause you want, like, pinching yourself, you know? And the coyote looks back, and it's like, what? I've delivered my message.
Right.
Get on with your life. You let it go. drop it. And so I thought, so that's what I did. I went through that. And then that book, the teen spell book, sold really, really well. And 2 years ago, my publisher called me and said, we'd like you to update the book. Because it was 2001. I mentioned having a pager, like there was just some outdated, lots of outdated stuff.
Right.
And today the market is so much more sophisticated.
So much more so.
So much more sophisticated. And so we wanted to broaden this book so that it would have an appeal to not just people who were teenagers, but at its core, it is speaking to the teen within us, whether we are that age or we're older, and we're just tapping into that curiosity and that blank slate, that tabla rasa, and really, like, can we erase by alchemy? Can we erase by alchemy the pain of the past? Can we let go of habits of self-destruction, or habits of anxiety, or habits of worry? Like, what can we do?
Habits of less than.
Habits of less than.
People, this is so it's so useful for anyone. And I'm so glad that it's not called the Teen Book of Spells anymore.
Right.
It's just the Book of Spells, because
exactly,
it's got messages in it for everybody.
and
we've grown up in the society that we have.
Exactly. And it's fascinating because, like you were saying, it's so much more acceptable. Really, a story I want to say is, so I live in a small town. The town that I live in is actually like 700 people. And then the big town nearby has got 7,000 people. So, but there's just 2 dentists, right? And I went to the dentist a couple of weeks ago, and the assistant comes in, and she's not even working on me. She just sneaks up and she goes, so how are you? And I'm like, good. And she knows my partner for the last 25 years. She goes, so do you know how to do a spell to get rid of somebody? I was like, first of all, I'm all numbed up. I'm like, huh? And then I'm thinking, how does she know? But I'm like, it's a small town, right? And then I go, well, yeah, but I don't do spells on other people. Like, I come from positivity. I come from light. I mean, it's just like, you can light a candle to anything. You could light it for positive, you could light it for negative, you could light it. And just like there are good Christians and bad Christians, and good Jewish people and bad Jewish, there are nice witches and mean witches.
Right.
Not every one of them is after personal development. That's where I come from. So I said, well, you could, and then she just went on to tell me about this woman who was coming back to the office, and she was the dentist's wife, and she was so mean to everybody, and she just caused such discord, and everybody was so nervous and worried about her. And I said, well, you could do the little spell where you write her name on a piece of paper, you fold it away from you, you put it in the freezer, put her on freeze so that she can't hurt you, but you never do anything about you do things to protect you,
about yourself,
and then maybe she doesn't see you, or maybe for some reason you appear bigger. When I was raised Christian Zionist, and they would talk about how empowering it is to imagine when you are scared and walking through a dark park or an alleyway or something, to imagine your angels with you. And there were so many stories of people who almost attacked somebody, but then they didn't, because they saw their angels with them. So bring your angels.
Really empowering.
Yeah, so bring your angels
with the force.
So walking with, especially when you're scared. This isn't about power over. This is about empower.
Yes.
Power within. And so anyway, so this lady, okay, so she says, and she brings back a little sticky note. Will this work? Yeah, sure. And then the next time I went to the dentist, I had a book to give her, and I had it face down, and then I turned it over, and that hygienist was like, oh, is this you? Are you the one? Oh my gosh, I would love to have your book. Like, can I have a copy too? And this is the dental hygienist. The other day I tipped someone from Buffalo Wild Wings with a copy of my book. This is not something I could have done 20 years ago.
Right.
You couldn't say the word witch as commonly as gardener, or whatever it is. I used to have to do a jewelry check when people would say, when it would come up that I was a writer,
Yeah.
and people would ask, what is, well, what do you write about? I would do a jewelry check. And if they were wearing a gold cross, I would tell them it was a seasonal cookbook. And then if they asked more questions, I might go, well, it's about the ancient Celtic holidays. I would just keep using words that were comfortable for them,
Right.
because
Right.
to scare them didn't do our people any good, right? It's kind of like when women had to try to find their voice. And at first we were accused of being shrill or bitchy or aggressive just because we were stepping out of the box that someone else had put us in.
Right.
And the same thing is true for witches.
Right.
If we come out forceful and intolerant, then we are going to remain outside of the mainstream. And that's not to say that you need to be Susie Sunshine all the time, but I do my best to communicate in ways that are comfortable. Like, I'm super grateful that I can say Grandma Coco right now.
Yes.
Because people get it instantly.
Yeah.
And with so many immersion schools, you can explain Dia de los Muertos. The reason I have this altar up for my best friend who died is, oh, that's like Dia de los Muertos. I'm like, exactly, and taking that trigger and taking the thorn out of the rose that is witchcraft, witch comes from the word wise. So it's the craft of the wise.
Right.
And the fact that it got the propaganda was so good is sad, but the internet has allowed women who are in middle America or in Christian households or in other places that might be afraid or intolerant of this lifestyle, then they can actually reach out and learn in ways that were not available 20 years ago.
Right. Right.
So that's one way that the community's really grown.
Witches are healers.
Yes.
You just basically call it that. You're a healer.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we, and to add to that, I actually am a massage therapist. I am Reiki. I'm Reiki too. I'm going to move towards Reiki master soon. I have my herbal medicine. I mean, my partner, we live here in the mountains. He actually dropped a 450-pound plow on his toe, and we exponentially added to his healing with herbal infused oils.
Yes. Right. Right.
And knowing that is wise. And
Yes.
the craft of it is the practice of developing this craft of knowing how to work with these elements, the crystals and the herbs, but also your intention, how to use your intention as an ingredient and as a guiding force.
Right. Yes, and that's what's so important, is understanding our intentions. That
Yes.
all our thoughts are powerful and we can change any situation that we're in.
And I think what's also really interesting and difficult for people who haven't been trained in this way is to decide, because a lot of times, especially when you're younger, people say, okay, what is your intention? And it's like, like they don't know how to find, they don't know how to find their inner compass.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I uncovered or talk about 5 ways to develop your inner compass or your intuition. And if I have it, because I believe this is how we develop our intuition first, is what strengthens our intention. Because we can't know our intention until we can feel it, until we can intuit our intention. So our intuition grows by 5 steps, and it grows like a muscle. So the more you use it, the stronger it'll get. So the first way to decide to develop your intuition is to slow down. That's the first, is to just stop. You're not going to hear your intuition by doing. You're going to hear your intuition by being still and allowing it to come to you, like the Rumi quote, that what you seek is seeking you.
Yes.
So when you slow down, your intuition can begin to find you.
Right.
And then the second one, and I remember hearing this very, very early on, because I used to ask my Sunday school teachers, well, how do I tell the difference? How do I know the difference between God's voice, the mother, father, God energy, and how do I, and separate from my ego?
Right.
How do I know the difference
That's a
between
great question.
spirit or divine speaking to me or my own desires or speaking to me? And she said, it's the small, still voice.
Mhm.
It's not the one that's screaming. It's not the one that feels that there's urgency, because the divine knows that there is always enough time. And the ego doesn't know that. The ego believes that all this has to happen within a certain amount of time to look perfect in the picture, like it's got a plan for the vision.
Yeah.
And so the small, still voice, not the one that's screaming at you, the one that's insistent, it will be insistent, but it will not have that feeling of panic or urgency bordering on anxiety.
Mhm.
That's the big difference. So those two things are the start. The second one is to trust your own body, because everybody has a different way of recognizing their intuition is speaking. For some people, it might be they get chills down their arms, right? They get goosebumps. They're like, oh, that's the truth. I know it's the truth. I just felt the chills. That's my body telling me. Some people will feel it in their gut. Some people will feel their heart warm. Some people might feel their head tingling, as if, the divine is raining golden light of knowledge and wisdom down on you. So everybody has a different way of interpreting the intuition in their own body. So you can't just say there's only one way to experience it.
Mhm.
And so paying attention to your body. And then the fourth way is to commune with nature, to go outside and to just be part of nature as a kid would. One of my favorite childhood activities, I used to love to name Crayola crayons. Like I used to
Love
believe,
it. Me too.
yeah, did you? Oh my, I love
I
it.
love all the colors. I've
I love all
always
the,
been drawn to colors.
yeah, so the sky to me was always elephant blue. Where I grew up, it was kind of this grayish blue. So it was, like a pale blue. It wasn't like here in the mountains, it's this brilliant blue, bluebird. Just super bright. And so that was really beautiful. So communing with nature. So that way, if you see that eagle that flies above, it might remind you to step back. If you see the water that you walk by a creek, or if you see it, it might remind you of the water running, might remind you to go with the flow. You might see a stagnant pool and you're like, oh, I'm letting myself become stagnant. There's so many messages
Mhm.
that when you're out in nature, and that have no agenda, right? And then the final is to rest. And again, coming back to our Waldorf roots, that is the in-breath and the out-breath.
Right.
You need the time for integration.
Mhm.
So these 5 steps, I believe, help anyone of any age to discover and empower their inner compass, will then give them more confidence. And confidence, because I'm a wordsmith, con means with, fidence, fido is fidelity.
Mhm.
So it is loyalty with yourself. So confidence means that when you have confidence, that means you're being loyal to you, to who you are. And so with that, I believe that is one path, one way to find your inner compass, to develop the confidence, so that when you have an intention is very, very clear. So that when you go to light your candle or cast your circle or send your spell out into the world, you have the confidence that you are asking for what you want, and not the picture of what somebody else wants for you, or
Right.
picture of what you think you should want to impress other people, or whatever, however you spun that circle out.
Right. Right. It's your true intention.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like the 5 steps that you mentioned actually all begins with stillness.
Yeah.
Begins and ends with stillness. It's
Yeah,
all
it
about
does.
where you
You're
get.
right. slowing down and resting, bookended by stillness. 3 little middle steps.
Yeah, because even spending time in nature and seeing those things, you really need to slow down to pay attention and not be like, okay, we have to finish this hike, in half an hour, let's go. You're going to miss all of that, right? So you have to slow down for that too. So it's really about slowing down and stillness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really, it's really like you were talking about earlier about receiving. When we talked about self-reflection, are you receiving that magic that's coming in?
Right.
Can you see that magic in every day? Can you see that there was a coincidence? Someone said something, the radio song came on, whatever it is, that's a
Yes.
track that you
Synchronicities.
yeah. And then that is again what Rumi, who I can't even remember, I want to say it was 13th century, but a long, long time ago, was talking about that which you seek is seeking you. These messages, they, I love Elizabeth Gilbert was in Big Magic, right? In her book, Big Magic. I don't know if you've read it, but she talks about how ideas desire manifestation.
Yeah. Yes.
And so these are those things. These desires are yearning, these ideas are yearning to be manifest through you.
Right.
And when you receive those and you become, when you become that channel that they come through, literally the channel.
Yes.
When I was pregnant with Skylar, my first son, I had a dream, and in my dream I was in like this Casbah tent, and some Chinese man was reading my I Ching, and I've never done that, but like in the dream, of course, whatever's happening is happening.
Right.
And so the healer asked me, what do you see your role as a parent? How do you see your role as a parent? And I said, I am the channel that they come through, and hopefully they don't pick up any of my dingleberries. And I'm like, I can't believe I said dingleberry to a spiritual man. Like I had this whole moment in the dream. And then he goes, you mean like a didgeridoo? And I was like, yeah. And so it was, that's what we do. We speak to our children through this channel.
Yeah.
And they come through us physically as women, right? They physically come through us. Right. And I felt like my job was to be as clear as possible so that he could pass through me without having to carry forward any of the stories I live with. How can I help him become what he is supposed to be and not finish or try to finish my unfinished business? That's not
right. And that is the true goal of parenting, I think, is to really recognize our children as just small human beings. They've come with everything that they need. They're just in this body that needs, they need to understand how to use that body and use their mind, but we don't need to fill them with anything. They know.
Yeah.
They're here for their purpose. And if we just get out of their way and sort of act as an assistant, they'll blossom.
Yes. Or as in Khalil Gibran, the prophet, when he talks about of children, he says, we are the bow and they are the arrow.
Yeah. Yeah. We just, we hold them.
Yeah. We hold them.
When I have conversations.
Yeah. And
my daughter, it's like, oh yeah, you're right. Let's just be quiet.
Yeah. I really enjoy learning from my children.
Me too. And learning with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Learning with them. And yeah, it's a journey and it's exciting. I mean, I'm going to visit my son in Hawaii to help him finish up his last college semester and move back to California. And he's excited to spend 10 days with me. He's 23 years old and he can't wait to hang out with me for 10 days. I'm still so shocked that happened.
Right. You succeeded.
I succeeded. My kid likes me. And I feel like you don't get that automatic pass as a parent.
Right.
You still need to be a person that's admirable. And for me, that has always been walking this path with nature. I mean, even you asked if my kids had read the book. They don't, in some ways they don't need to. My youngest was going through a really difficult breakup. And then he told me, well, I got this stone and then I lit this candle and I did like, he created this whole ritual around helping him to see the tangible evidence of he and this partner moving apart from each other. And so they, like I said, they literally live it.
Yes,
They would
they
know
really do.
how to create an altar. The very first public altar, I mean, the very first public ritual that I ever did, I invited all the big wigs of my spiritual community. And I was so scared and nervous about, doing this for the first time in front of everybody. And my sons were like 4 and 6. And I thought, you know what I need to do is I need to return to my original innocence. I need to know that there's actually nothing I can do wrong when my intention is good. And,
Right.
and so I, as that evidence for myself, I ask them to create the altar.
Oh my gosh.
So they created that altar because I believe that when we move from that space, that we are all innocent.
Yes.
We all have original innocence, infallible lovability, and we are divine creations constantly co-creating
Yes.
with the divine.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so for me, it starts with that original innocence. When I remember that I am that brightness,
Yes.
that I am that blank slate, that I am stepping into these experiences. I had a little girlfriend when I was 4 who was afraid when she saw me because I gave such big bear hugs. Because I just wanted to hug everybody, I mean, my first softball team was the Sunshine Girls, and I got the most enthusiastic. Like that was always me, like always wanting to embrace. So why would it be any different when I step into circle? It's not.
Right. Right. It's not.
I bring that forward with me. And so it's the same thing when we put up a flower arrangement. It makes us feel good.
Yeah.
It's the same, we create mood just by decorating our house. And people understand that. And so it's just a small step away from that to creating magic.
Right. Jamie, I feel like this interview was so inspiring. So just, it connects us, as people, connects us to ourselves. You're like the embodiment of this book. You know what I mean? Like you exude everything that you're sharing in this book.
Yeah, I'm definitely not. Yeah, it's
beautiful.
it's full transparency. And I, as a matter of fact, I wanted to say that about this book. So it shines and it shimmers, and so the way this book cover was created was they did a first pass, and it had a rose with thorns, and it just kind of depicted a type of witchcraft that was not where I was coming from. So I sent the designer 2 images. One was this poem by Leonard Cohen. It says, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Because for me, I used magic and witchcraft as to heal those cracks.
Yes.
Like I think it's a Japanese culture where they'll take a cup and they break it and they fill it with filigree.
Fill it with gold.
Yeah. And so then I also sent her this image. It's called Expansion, and the sculptor is Paige Bradley, and it's this image of this woman sitting down. She's bare chested, but it's just a sculpture. So and her arms are out like this, and she's open, and there's all these cracks throughout her body, but there's this light that shines from within. So this book cover is conveying that truth, that there's a crack in all things. There's a crack in you, there's a crack in me, but this is where the light comes.
Yeah.
And on page,
and it shines.
it shimmers and it shines. And on page 73, I need you to correct this and tell all your people. On page 73, there is an error. There was a design error. So as much as I love my Sarah who created this, there was a little design error, and the information for the West and the South were flipped. And that just about killed my Capricorn nature. I was just beside myself. And then, because it's such a fundamental thing, the elements, it's so fundamental to my magic, to where I come from. It's my roots, the 4 directions and the 4 elements. And I had a friend say to me, well, since that's your only real error in the whole book, Perhaps it's your spirit hole. And a spirit hole is where the women weavers would leave that hole to remind themselves that they are always evolving. And this is also the place that the muse comes through. This is where the spirit comes through. Your mistakes are your opportunity for growth.
Yes.
So I like to let people know, because if I could, I would take a gold pen to every book that's out there and correct this. And then the irony was it was supposed to be changed in the first reprinting, and it didn't get changed, and it didn't get changed for the
Maybe
third.
things are shifting and South and West are actually gonna change
I
all
know.
these elements.
I don't know. I'm like, my desk is now in the southwest corner. I'm like, okay, what do I need to learn about this? What's going on? So yeah, so I wanted to make sure I pointed that out, but also that lesson that because mistakes can feel so devastating when you like you mentioned giving this to your daughter's friends. Mistakes can feel so devastating when you're younger.
Yeah.
And they can really tear you down. But if we look at them as spirit holes,
Yeah.
if we look at them as that place that we intentionally left so that we can connect back into the spirit, that we can connect back in to the vastness through this little mistake, that's the part where I want young women to not be so hard on themselves.
Absolutely.
And to see that they're being held here.
And when you say, perhaps it was a little hole that was intentionally left, I mean, I would like to even add, perhaps the universe conspired to leave it.
Yeah.
You didn't intentionally leave it, but they left it there because guess what? Nothing's perfect unless it's imperfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's totally my motto. I'm always like, nothing's perfect unless it's imperfect. I spelled that backwards. Whatever, it's fine.
I love that. I'm going to add that to my thought, but we're still going to change it for the 5th printing. But
no, it won't happen. That would be hilarious.
I know it did. It already happened 4 times, and then finally I asked for a copy. I'm like, "Can I have a copy of the freshest version since we've reached 15,000 copies sold?" So clearly we're on to the new books, and they're like, "Oh, it didn't happen. We're going to make sure it happens next time." I'm like, "Okay."
They're basically like, just get over it, okay?
I know.
Get over it. Oh, Jamie, our time has come.
Yes.
Let's end this interview, but I definitely want to do more. And, one quick thing is when we talked before, you had said that this writing workshop that you had that started in January, that anyone can join in anytime.
Correct.
But it doesn't read that way on your website. So
I have to update that.
Go and go in April and be like, okay, I'm going to join.
Yeah, I know. I need to add that. Well, at first I thought it was going to be a year-long course. And then I decided, so yeah, it's called Journey. Yeah. I'm like, I can let people in.
Right, for whoever needs to come at the time that they come.
Right. Exactly. Well, I mean, I am a double Capricorn, so I will try to put a lot of construct and then I'll go,
forget it.
What the heck? But yes, I will rewrite that to put that in. Yeah. Journey into Her. It's a writing workshop. It's a self-discovery book I'm writing, and it's a pottery collection that's going to be on display in Mount Shasta in April. So I just find this journey into her with a capital H, her being our divine feminine, her being anybody who identifies with that. So, or wants to bring more of that into their life.
Me.
You.
Thank you so much. I will talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.